What's up, everybody? In this video, we're going to be talking about The Art of Invisibility by Kevin Mitnick. Before we get started, I want to remind everybody to check out the links in the description for ways that you can support me. There's a link in there to buy me a coffee, which is just a way to donate to me. One coffee equals $1, and so on. And then there's also Amazon affiliate link in there in case you want to buy this book, which I do recommend buying this book. It's really good. And that affiliate link, I just get a portion of the sale from Amazon. So I just wanted to remind everybody to check those links out to help support me. And in case I put any other links in the future. I don't really have a self-help reason why I reviewed this book. I came across it because I read James Altucher's book, Choose Yourself. And in that book, he mentions how depressed he was at one point, and it's like he thought about suicide, but instead of suicide, he thought about if he could just completely delete his life. And he did recommend a book in there, which is on Amazon as well. I don't remember the name of it, but it's like how to disappear. I think it's how to disappear completely and never be found again. But that book is super old, but he still read that book. And so I was searching for that book just to read it, being curious. And then I came across this book. But this book is very interesting. I don't know if I'm trying to blend it into the self-help thing on this channel, but I think it can be kind of self-help because on this book I've discussed one of my favorite books, which is Life After Google. And then also talking about James Altucher's book, he mentions it in there. But it's also just about privacy. Kevin Mitnick is one of the most well-known hackers in the world. He's done jail time because he's been such good of a hacker. And so this book is really about privacy and how to be completely private. It's about invisibility, really. But this book is good education for anybody interested in privacy. If you're interested in cybersecurity, this is also very good in case you're thinking about that industry. This is a very, very low primer into that because he gives you ways that companies are tracking you, and you can use that to figure out which part of cybersecurity you might be interested in. But there's just a lot of stuff in the news about privacy. It doesn't matter what your political affiliation is or what your view on life is. It's good to know about privacy because in Life After Google, we talked about George Gilder talked about how these companies, Google, Facebook, all these companies are just giving you their services for free because they're mining all of your data. And this book just goes on to further into that. And I've also been just interested in the backbone of the internet. I guess I've been into cybersecurity recently, but there's another book, Tangled Web We Weave, that I started reading, and that's just about the backbone of the internet and how that gets started, how you don't really have that many choices. And all that information just shows you can't really go invisible, as he says in this book, and you'll learn in this book. And I can't begin to go over all the tips in this book. It's so insane, and I don't want to give it away either. But I also was kind of hesitant to review this book because I'm like, I don't want to get put on some watch list. But then I remember, you got to think the guy wrote the book, so people already know it's out there. He's meant to sell the book, so I'm like, whatever. I think people need to understand this because it's not just about this book trying to disappear. You have to remember in Life After Google, George Gilder talked about what the downfall of Google would be. Companies like Google store all of your data in one place, and then hackers are going to slowly get it. So we're going to have to get better at cybersecurity. I already have friends that have had their identity stolen, false tax returns filed, and you have to think with all this government stimulus going around, there's going to be more identity theft fraud because there's so much money at stake per person. But with that being said, it's essential that you look after your own privacy and security. And a lot of us don't even know about that. We don't know about end-to-end encryption and how important that is, and he talks about that in here. And George Gilder talked about that as well. But also, you have to make sure that if you are using encryption, which he does recommend using end-to-end encryption in your messaging services, in your email, and Google doesn't Google doesn't use end-to-end encryption because they have to be there reading your emails because that's how they're monetizing you. But with that long intro, let me start getting into some tips. So he talks about messaging apps, and I've been using Signal recently, but I think he recommends Signal, he recommends Telegram, but you have to, if you're going to use a messaging service, you should use off-the-record messaging and perfect forward secrecy. He recommends a few in here. Like, that's why I recommend getting this book, because he has so many recommendations for software and services that you should use. And another thing, so that's for messages. Like, you shouldn't just use your native messaging service on your phone, because there's so many people that can read that. Theoretically, Apple could read that. Your internet provider, if you're on Wi-Fi, your cell phone service provider can read that as well. And he also has these cool things. He has these weird recommendations in this book of how to stay completely secure. For example, if you wanted to have a cell phone where nobody could track you, then he recommends giving a homeless person cash to buy a phone for you from Walmart, just completely cash, because if you go in there and you spend the cash yourself, or if you buy the phone with cash, then you can be on camera. And if you go in Walmart now, there's those screens now where it says you are being recorded. So that's something to keep in mind in case you do want to have private messaging. But even then, it's easy to be tracked. He gives examples in here of people that have done that and still tracked down because they conducted their normal business on that cell phone. You end up messaging somebody you end up searching websites you normally go to, and you can't do that if you're going to be completely invisible or private, if you want your messages to be private. And that's one thing that I learned from this book too. Your cell phone service provider, your internet provider can see basically everything you're doing. And in order to not let that occur, you have to use VPNs, proxies, Tor browsers. There's so many steps to it. But even your VPN, you have to analyze how the VPN routes its traffic, how whether it tracks where the VPN was logged, how it was initiated. And he recommends using Bitcoin to pay for your VPN. And that's another thing too that I liked about this book. He talked about Bitcoin and how Bitcoin isn't really private, because a lot of people don't know that either. They think you can go and buy drugs with Bitcoin. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff, but people can see where you bought the Bitcoin, especially if you have a wallet like Coinbase. But even if you don't, it still can be tracked back to you. They can track a person that sold it to you. So he gives a method to buy secure Bitcoin, how to then launder the Bitcoin, and then start purchasing the things you want to remain private. And I think that's going to be pretty important in the future, because countries are talking about digital currencies now. We're basically already in a digital currency world with our credit cards. Your credit card provider, your bank can see all your transactions. So in order to privatize things, you'd have to buy Bitcoin in a weird way. You'd then have to use a different laptop. He talks about that. And another tip that I recommend for normal people is the public Wi-Fi thing. He talks about public Wi-Fi, and I knew that whenever you get on public Wi-Fi, for example, at an airport, at Starbucks, you should use a VPN. I knew that part already, just because otherwise people can see the traffic. But also one thing I didn't know is that people can create a fake Wi-Fi network, get you to log into it automatically, and just see all your information that way. This book really opens your eyes into all the ways that your data can be stolen or observed by hackers, by the government. For example, I didn't realize that when you drive around, the government's passively scanning license plates all the time. There's just so many ways that you can be tracked. He also gives ways that your home internet can be compromised. Like your router, if you use the same router over and over, or if you use the standard password, there's just ways that people could compromise your router. If you have an older router, they're easily compromised, and people can, I don't know how I'd say, I guess spoof it. So in the way the security that the router from your internet company comes is not secure enough. So he tells you a way to check the security on your router, update it. He recommends using like your own router if you can. I think in certain situations with certain companies you can't use your own, but that's just something to keep in mind. This book really shows you all the ways you're being tracked, which sadly to say is kind of impossible not to be tracked now. He does a good job of trying to tell you. He does a good job of trying to tell you how to not be tracked, how to be invisible. But what I got from it is basically impossible. And the only way that you can be completely invisible is by using homeless people, a group of homeless people, I guess in a location far away from yours, to go into Walmart and buy the various things you need with cash. Because you need gift cards, you would need a cell phone that they paid for cash. You need a hotspot. You need a laptop. You need Bitcoin. It's pretty crazy, all the things. But he does have tons of tips here, just for your personal security. Like one thing I started doing, he recommends using Proton Mail. I started using Proton Mail because it's end-to-end encryption. But the one thing about Proton Mail that's not safe is that anybody can sign up for it, which is good if you're going to be invisible, but it's bad in that there's no two-factor authentication already that comes with it. You have to do that, and that's a little bit complicated because you have to enter a code every time you log into your email, but it's more secure. So I've started using Proton Mail for my personal things instead of Gmail. But there's a lot of like little tips in here if you want to be private, and also just surfing the internet using a private browser. Many people know that, but they think it's for bad reasons you use a private browser. But it actually turns out that the government, if you don't use a private browser, they can search your browsing history for forever. And if you delete your browsing history, that might be a crime. So there's just tons of information in this book. Another thing that he mentions that's really scary is home alarm systems and Internet of Things devices. People think those are really secure, or they just like having their Alexa there, but the Internet of Things devices are typically not super secure, even if they say they are nowadays, because they're still working on how they're going to be secure. And so people are very sophisticated on how they hack those, and they could use those Internet of Things devices to hack your home alarm system. And also if you have one of those home alarm systems that has a camera, he just gives a bunch of ways that your home alarm system can be hacked. So unless you really want people looking at your house, or an easy way to log into your house, your house camera, or even turn off your alarm system, I wouldn't really get one of those. And especially if your home alarm system is connected to the internet, it's just it's just too easy for somebody to target your house to get robbed or to hack. There's just some nasty things out there. This book, see, now I started this whole video about saying it's not about self-help, but I think it is. I think in this internet age, in this life, while we're still with Google, you have to get this book to just put in common security tips. You might not think your privacy is valuable, but it is. You should start encrypting as many things in your life as possible, and this book provides the way to do that. You obviously probably not going to buy Bitcoin using a homeless person, because that part, he has like a name for them too, because he tells you got to give them so much money in the beginning and then give them a reward at the end, which you obviously would, right? Because if you give a homeless person who you don't know a bunch of cash with no incentive to come back, then why wouldn't they just run away? Obviously there could be repeat work, but if you give the homeless person repeat work, they might know who you are, and then that ruins the part of invisibility. So at the end of the day, this book is actually one of my favorite books I've ever read, because it's just so much behind the scenes information that we don't know about. It just makes you think about your privacy, because I knew we were being tracked, and I knew our lives weren't private, and I knew it was pretty bad. But this book just confirmed all my thoughts that yes, everything that you think is being tracked is probably being tracked, including your webcam on your computer, any microphone that you have. You should have a way to log it off. It's just crazy. But if you're interested in maybe you want to disappear, there's ways for you to do that, and here are the best ways because this guy knows how to do it. And then there's, just general privacy that you might be interested in. You might not try to travel around the world and want to disappear and be completely anonymous, because this book also talks about traveling and how badly governments can search you. But if you just want to take care of your privacy and find the best ways to remain private, this is the book to get. And if it doesn't have everything you're looking for, then it's at least a starter book for you to keep your privacy. So that's my review for this book. I hope you liked it. Make sure to check out the description for ways you can support me, and give this video a like, and make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.